Welcome to the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. Before we dive into this episode, I would love a favour from you. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself and express yourself on and off the stage. Has your love for dance started to feel overshadowed by a growing focus on your body and food? Are you a teacher or parent concerned about your dancer's relationship with eating, training, and self-image? Then this episode is for you. Today on the Dance Reel podcast, I'm speaking with Jess Spinner, founder of The Whole Dancer. Jess is a former professional dancer who now works as a dance nutritionist. Jess holds a nutrition certification through Precision Nutrition. She has completed her qualifications in emotional eating psychology and more recently, the executive education program in designing sustainable nutrition plans through Harvard University. Her work continues to evolve through ongoing study in nutrition, emotional eating, behavior change, mindset, and psychology, with a focus on supporting dancers in ways that are both practical and psychologically aware. Jess also draws upon her lived experience as a dancer. Welcome to my podcast, Jess.
Thank you for having me, Kate. I'm so thrilled to connect.
I would love to ask you, as we ask all of our guests, how you started dance to where it's led you today.
So, I was one of those people who started very young, and I don't remember, because I was probably 3 or something, why exactly my mother put me in dance. And she doesn't talk about me being a nonstop mover or anything like that, which is what a lot of people say. But early on, I really loved the performing aspect of it. And it's very funny because now I see this in my 6-year-old daughter where she just lights up when she's dancing in front of someone. And that was my experience as well. And I loved being on stage. I loved learning dances. I started a very recreational school. And then I fell in love with the ballet side of it. And the school was not focused on that at all. But my studio owner actually, first she brought in a special ballet person. And looking back, I'm kind of it feels like she kind of brought that person in for me, which is very thoughtful, of course. But obviously everyone benefited. But then she said to me, I think, if you want to do the ballet thing, you should go train somewhere else, which I give her so much credit for, because I think seeing now, we're working also as a dance teacher, a lot of times I don't feel like dance teachers or studio owners necessarily have that in their mind as my real goal should be supporting this person to do what they love and what they want to do next and getting to that next level. Sometimes they want to keep those people because they're oh, they could be good for this or that. Yeah. So I really give her a lot of credit for sending me away. And then I started training intensively in ballet, and I went to college for dance and arts administration. And then after college, I danced professionally. And for me, I started struggling with food and body image from around age 14. And it remained a struggle for my entire dance journey and career. And so then when I stopped and was career transitioning, I came around to wanting to support dancers in this area because it was just, I always describe it as a black cloud. It kind of just followed me, and I was never able to fully enjoy what I was doing as a dancer because that was always there and it was always in my mind and detracting from my experience.
And so you have your own podcast as well.
Yeah.
And you are known as The Whole Dancer. Can you talk to us about what you're doing now in the context of podcasting and how you are helping dancers?
Yeah. So I work with dancers as a holistic health, nutrition, and lifestyle coach. And primarily I work one-on-one with dancers. I've had over the years, different group programs. I have an online course. I actually have 2 online courses. Kind of forgot that for a second. But mostly I work with dancers one-on-one and help them to really find what is their own version of balance in this pursuit, which is tricky. and also just to find peace with food in their bodies and to dial in, the nutrition plan so that it's not something that feels obsessive, but rather can happen very easily and without overthinking.
So when you speak, because you speak a lot about bodybuilding, image, resilience in dancers, what does that look like in a day-to-day training and life?
Yeah. So it's an important distinction, right? A lot of times in the conversation around body image, it's talking about positive body image or negative body image or body neutrality. And I kept their book here, so I'd remember to cite them properly. But body image resilience comes from Lindsay and Lexi Kite, and their book is More Than a Body. And it's this idea that I think is so essential for dancers that says you are going to have bad days. Even I've been working on my own self and body image for 15 years, right? And even for me, in different phases of life, postpartum, for example, right? I had some rough moments through that. But even now, there are moments where I look in the mirror and I might go to a judgmental thought. But when you have cultivated body image resilience, you can very quickly move through that and move on with your life and your day and get yourself back to neutral or positive much more easily. And for dancers, it's not necessarily realistic that they're never going to have a thought or concern about their bodies. Sometimes it's a costume. Sometimes it's a studio in the mirrors in a specific room or something like that, or it's their placement at the bar. But when you've built body image resilience, you can work through those moments without them tearing you down or crushing your confidence or making you question yourself and your life and your goals. And I always tell clients, it's not like flipping on a light switch to get to this point. It is day in and day out, building self-awareness and then finding the tools to work through those challenges so that you can access them more easily over time.
And that's what you're able to do, is to help with those tools as well and education. What would some of those tools look like?
Yeah, one thing that I love, and I do have a few articles on Point Magazine online that you can look at that have additional tools. But one that I love, I call the Whole Dancer Body Image Booster. And it's really like a meditative practice where I say either laying in bed first thing in the morning, or a lot of times dancers find themselves on the floor when they're like warming up for class, right? So you just lay down and you place one hand on your heart and one hand on your stomach, because when we do actually connect to ourselves in this way physically, it releases happy hormones in our brain. So like it's just a good way to kind of connect with yourself. And take some deep breaths and then start to think about the parts of your body. I think especially maybe the parts of your body that you're more judgmental of, and send those parts of yourself some love and some gratitude, and just acknowledge all that your body does for you as a dancer, because obviously it's doing a lot for us.
And it's a beautiful way to connect with the body, isn't it? Just like even outside of dance, as opposed to, I know I've said this on many episodes before, the go-to for some dancers I feel like is Instagram. What are they doing? What does that look like? Instead of feeling that sense of, but what does it feel like within? So and you're, with that in mind, in your experience, when do dancers typically begin to shift from experiencing their body to then evaluating it?
I think it can start young, even younger for dancers. I mean, I was reading research recently that said something about body image thoughts starting as young as age 3. And I was like, I don't know about that. That's, I mean, maybe, but the concepts would be very different, I feel, at that age, right? But I think for dancers, it can start between 8 to 10. And that's when ballet training especially gets more serious. And, you're trying to learn the proper shapes and positions that you're trying to make with your body. And then obviously through puberty can get challenging for a lot of dancers. Because I've had a lot of clients who were like, oh, like my teachers would tell me I have the perfect dance body or the perfect ballet body, before they went through puberty, and they were lanky and long and had no hips and no chest. And it was like, this isn't ideal in the ballet world and still in some circles, but not something that you'll realistically maintain. So then when you go through changes that you should be going through, it's a time when a lot of dancers start to question and judge themselves and struggle in that area.
And how can teachers support dancers that do that? I know of, the typical story, even from when I was training a dancer that had the ballet body or whatever you want to call it, and then went through puberty and questioning, is a career even possible? Where are we at right now?
I think there's a lot of teachers who need to consider their unconscious biases and the things that for them have been naturally planted in their brains over so many years or decades in terms of what they value and what they look at and say, this is what ballet or dance requires. And it's interesting because when I started teaching dance, which is a more recent thing for me, but when I started teaching, I did notice, naturally hyperextension and feet and turnout, it appealed to me. When people have that, naturally your eye goes there because you've been so brainwashed into thinking this is the valuable, this is the good stuff, this is what everyone wants to have or needs to have or whatever. And I was like, well, you can't as a teacher just focus on those people, but there are teachers who do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing with body size and shape, where there's some teachers who really do just focus on the people who they view as fitting into some sort of ideal, which is only going to perpetuate the issues that the dance world has with inclusivity, And so I think teachers really need to look at themselves and say, what do I see when I look around a studio? What do I value? What am I judging? And how can I shift into a mindset and a view that supports all of the dancers that I'm seeing in front of me?
And I suppose in order to do that, there's that letting go. I also think of the underlying narrative of how that teacher must still be really judging themselves as well, and their own relationship with their own bodies. And as part of that, it's peeling back that layer and going, is there something I might need to, I'm going to use the word heal within myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what patterns have you noticed in dancers who begin to struggle with food or body control, even in subtle ways?
I think that a lot of it's a common time to start through puberty. Naturally, female bodies are supposed to change through that time, and somehow still people and dancers feel very unprepared for those changes. And again, teachers need to look at themselves and their own relationship to their own bodies. I think it's true for parents as well, that, if you've not worked through your own stuff with your body, then you might struggle to support a young person through those body changes as well. Even to be like, oh, my daughter has always been thin and now her body is changing. And like we feel a lot of women will feel some sort of failure that's happening. And it's like, no, like this is all supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of challenge through that period of time. And then dancers can be in really positive environments, but if they themselves, which is, again, this is something that this is a natural or a very common personality trait among especially ballet dancers, is like a very type A or perfectionist personality. Well, then you want to be perfect in all areas of your life. And how are we defining perfection? And right now, especially, it's a scary time in social media where thinness and even very disordered eating and very restrictive eating is being accepted by many and glorified and shared. And this is how little I eat every day. But it's enough for me for this or that reason. So that's a very dangerous thing that's just happening. And I think feeding into that ongoing challenge that already exists for young people who have perfectionist. And I'll also say, I have a lot of clients who had received a comment from someone that kind of got this negative or unhealthy ball rolling. And that was my experience as well. When I was 14 and coming back from my first summer intensive away from home, I had gained weight. In fact, it was pre-puberty and the timing was right for me to gain weight. But when I came back, my teacher I was not even in class. I was right outside of the studio. She just tapped me on the thigh and she was like, that wasn't there before. And it hit me like shame, right? Like I can remember just feeling like embarrassed. And then I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my mother. I just went home and started a diet that I devised from my own very little knowledge of anything healthy. And that started me down the road. And a lot of dancers have an experience where someone, it's not even necessarily a teacher, like sometimes it's like a doctor makes a weird comment about something, or a parent or a sister or a friend, and that can kind of start you down a path that's just not helpful.
And shame, you said shame. For me, it's like that's the key word that also keeps it almost hidden, and you don't want to talk about it, but you want to deal with it yourself. And so, I'm even thinking, how can we have these maybe preemptive conversations with dancers about what is going to happen to their body, how we can actually celebrate it as advocates for the industry, mentors and teachers and parents, and having that shift in mindset with that.
It should be celebrated. It's healthy, right? I mean, it's exactly what should be happening, and I have so many clients who have irregular periods, or, like my experience was I got a period at 15 and I then felt again like that was a sign that I was getting fat. So I cut back, and then I didn't have another period again until I was 18. And so many of my clients have like this incredible irregularity, or they just don't get a period at all, and it's normalized. And it's again, you want to encourage, and like you said, I love the word celebrate healthy dancers, because when you're healthy and you take care of yourself, like that's when you will be able to perform at your highest level. That's when you will feel good in what you're doing and be able to give it all the energy that you want to give it, and you'll retain choreography because your brain will be working well. Those are all things that should be celebrated.
When you're working with your dancers, what would you find their biggest resistance is, maybe within themselves and their ecosystem? So I'm thinking about parents, teachers. What's the biggest challenge that they might come up against mentally to make that shift of loving their bodies and their changes in their bodies?
I think that it is still the fact that while many schools, teachers, professional companies are saying the right things in terms of, like we celebrate everyone and we accept different bodies and shapes and people, when you look around, you're like, oh, like everyone still seems to look a certain way for the most part.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for them to trust that they can be healthy and still achieve their goals and still maybe have a career if that's the goal, or get hired somewhere, or take those next steps. And so I think it is fighting with that. And also, even young ones have gotten this concept of what is the right look built into their brain just from what they've seen around on social media and things like that. And so they have this idea in their heads of what it should be. And sometimes they worry that, well, if I don't fit into that, where can I fit? Or will my goals, be dashed?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny. I remember my own journey as a dancer with body image. And as a young dancer, I was told I didn't have enough stamina. I was too skinny. Like, I'm thinking about 8 years and 10 years old. And the ballet teacher's mother pulled me into her house, which was at the back of the studio, and fed me stout beer mixed with lemonade, and told my mum she needs to have stout. She's actually got to build up her stamina and put on weight. I was just naturally, But then I had this narrative, thinking of meaning making going forward, and stamina was probably always an issue for me, even full time with Allegro, and probably because that was also planted in my brain. But then when it came to when I stopped dancing, I had this, I'm thin, and when my body changed, I couldn't handle it. The meaning making I'd made for lack of a better word, can I say, I was going to say success, but not that, more like self-esteem and self-worth was on the fact that I was told, oh, you're thin, you're naturally thin, you don't have a problem. And I would see girls that didn't have the same genetics as me get shamed. And I was thinking, oh, thank goodness. So I had that. And then so as a woman, when I became a woman, oh my gosh, like the beating myself up. And I was a normal, healthy woman, but that was big in my head just because I'd seen it, I witnessed it. I was like, I don't want to be that, because that comes with a lot of shame and negativity. And yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And so now as a woman, I'm actually rebuilding a healthy mindset and relationship with my body, because it came in late, that
Yeah.
negativity.
And you're not alone in that either, right? It's like bodies change as they're meant to over the course of our lives.
Yeah.
And that's something I say to dancers too. It's like, sometimes they've gone through puberty, which is like this first big earth shattering or earth shifting change. And it's like, your body is going to keep changing. And now, right, at 41, I look back and I'm like, there's been so many different seasons in my life, and as there should be. Yeah. And when you can build a place where mentally and physically your goal is to be healthy and to support yourself, then you can ride the waves of those changes without them totally throwing you off course.
So with that in mind, how do you approach conversations around nutrition with dancers in a way that supports performance without encouraging rigidity? So for those high-performing dancers.
It's a matter of making the focus not rule-based or super strict, or I'm not someone within my coaching that provides any meal plan to follow, because even that, I think that dancers need more flexibility, and they have to learn that flexibility, right? And sometimes that means having packaged snacks because they're quick and easy. Sometimes that means having more simple carbs because they're easily digestible but will give you energy for the next rehearsal. And so I think it's not necessarily letting them feed into any sort of perfectionism in their food, but realizing that it has to be constantly shifting and changing in order to meet their daily needs. I always say consistent eating is one of the biggest keys when I talk to dancers. And so that means for dancers, because sometimes most of the time their schedules are so packed that a lot of the time the biggest missed opportunity is just that they're not eating consistently throughout the day. And that's because it's tricky, because, they can have breakfast and then, they're training for this many hours, and then they might have lunch, and then, they might have a break, and they miss chances to have an additional snack that they probably need, or they're going too many hours between eating because they're like, oh, I'm going into a rehearsal, so I don't want to eat a snack in my 5-minute break. And I'm like, well, you have to eat a snack in your 5-minute break probably in order to give yourself the caloric density that you need.
And that word calories, I think the dancers are afraid of that word.
Yeah. And it's just energy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where this came from, but my 6-year-old's, school, somebody said something, I guess. But she one day she hasn't brought it up since. It was months ago. One day she came home and she looked at a package and she was, oh, calories, that's bad, right? And I was like, no. I was like, no, she shouldn't be talking about this at 6. Don't start now.
Oh, well, thank goodness she's got you as her mom.
I mean, I was like, no, calories are just energy, and your body needs a lot of energy, especially because you're growing and because you're active, and no, they're good. We need them.
And I'm thinking about the line, with dancers of discipline and control. And when it comes to food and training and body management, where do you see the line between the two?
I don't really like discipline or control. I don't think discipline's all bad. I think control, when it comes to food, can be a dangerous word, because it's a very eating disorder word. It's like in disordered eating, a lot of it is about wanting to control this thing and control our bodies and control our intake. And so with dancers, I don't really think that that's ever a helpful term. I like alignment. You want your food approach, your choices, and your view of what you're eating and when you're eating and the balance of foods that you're consuming to be aligned with your goals and aligned with what works for you and what your personal body needs. And I think that a lot of times dancers still can get into the habit of, you know, trying to minimize intake. And again, like they take the discipline that can be very valuable in showing up for class and working hard and all of that, and they try to connect that to their food choices by, you know, being perfectionists with food and only eating healthy foods and, you know, getting into orthorexic tendencies where, you know, they're just thinking I should only eat the foods that have the most nutrients. And then again, right, they don't end up getting the energy or calories that they need. And so I think it's really just, how can I align my food choices with what my goals are? And most dancers want to feel strong in class and they want to be energized and they want to be able to focus and, you know, they want to have the mental headspace to retain choreography. And you need to have an eating plan and approach that will support all of those things.
Absolutely. And what about comparison and peer environments and that those influences on a dancer's perception of their own body? I just keep going. I know I probably mentioned it in every episode. Instagram and TikTok and all of those things are easy access comparison, right?
Yes, it's always there. It's so easy to just pick up on comparing yourself all the time. That's part of what's really hard for finding healthy environments is that sometimes the people at the top really do have a very healthy approach and they're aware and they have good intentions. But like you said, the students are not only comparing to one another in the room, but they're on Instagram and looking at other dancers and comparing other bodies to their own. And sometimes they feed into the unhealthy narrative around food. They are feeding into unhealthy messages around body. And so, you know, even if the teachers are doing a very good job at not judging or comparing one body to another, the dancers themselves go there. I always remind my clients that comparison is automatic and it's not something that we can turn off. And it's just a human response to being surrounded by other people. And so just like body image and body thoughts, you have to learn to work through those thoughts and find ways to let them serve you instead of letting them tear you down.
Can you give an example of that? I'm just thinking as dance mums that listen, and sometimes they reach out and want to have these discussions. So they might want to replay a part for their dancer. I'm thinking around the age of 15. If they were what would that mean and what would that look like?
Yeah. So I think that when we are in a dance class, a lot of the time when we're looking around at our friends or peers, we'll compare by saying, oh my gosh, her extension's so much higher than mine. Oh my gosh, look how good her pirouettes are. She's so much better than me, right? And it's just about this. Sometimes we downward compare as well. We'll look and be like, oh, she's not really doing those jumps so great. I can do better than that, I think, right? But it's just about kind of like putting ourselves into this hierarchy. And if you can shift your thinking in those moments and instead say, what can I learn from what I see in front of me? Like, wow, she's doing 4 pirouettes. What do I think is maybe helping her to achieve that I can apply to myself? Because then sometimes dancers can develop this critical eye that even a teacher might not look at somebody who's doing 4 pirouettes and be like, what are they doing that I can convey to my other students so that they're learning from this beautiful example? And so instead of making it a judgment of how am I in where do I stack up in this room, to say, what can I learn from the people around me? And if you're doing a downward comparison, which doesn't usually make us feel good anyway, that's like, you know, let me like bolster myself up by talking down about this other person. Yeah. But if you are making one of those comparisons, to just, I say, like, send that person some love. Like, wow, they're working really hard on this. Jumps maybe don't come easily to them.
Yeah. It's almost like developing that systems thinking and critical thinking as opposed to making it mean something about yourself in that moment.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And that can actually help if any dancers want to become teachers one day, right?
Yeah.
Little skill in the class.
Yeah. What's helping them to actually do it so well?
Yeah. So for dancers that are trying to find balance with food and their body, what tends to get in the way of that practice?
What can be tricky is it can kind of linger for such a long, like I said, my experience was it stayed with me for so long. And especially at that time, and it's gotten better, especially over the last 10 years since I've been doing this work. But when I was struggling with this stuff, asking anyone for help never crossed my mind. The mentality was always, I have to figure this out. Why can't I figure this out? There's got to be some diet that's going to work for me to achieve my goals. But I never recognized as I was going through it that the real issue wasn't with my body. When I think about what my body was when I was dancing professionally and the fact that I was still judging it so harshly 24/7, it's like, wow, I was in a really bad place because my body was pretty much the ideal. I was not one of those dancers with like super long, skinny legs, like very, where your torso is so short and your legs are so long, which in my mind, especially at that time, was like, this is the perfect thing, right? But now we know there's all different shapes and sizes that can be such beautiful dancers. But I was never big. And when I was dancing professionally, I was at my smallest, but I still felt I was too big. And I think that when dancers struggle to even recognize, and it's true for many of them because it's been in their heads for so long, they struggle to even recognize where they're at physically. So they keep judging themselves and they keep going down this hole of like looking for some solution, but they're kind of not trying to fix the right problem, right? They're trying to fix something that probably doesn't really exist. And it's mostly a mindset thing. And it's mostly stepping back and being like, I'm probably okay in terms of look and things like that. Like, what I need to focus on is approaching food in a way that does not feel awful all the time, or I can't stop thinking about it because I'm obsessing over what's going to be the right choice. And so seeking support is a huge asset and something dancers should definitely think about. And then I think that can help them to see, oh, like my mindset around all of this stuff is really the thing that needs work.
Yeah. I don't know if you get asked this question much as you're talking. I'm thinking, but what about dancers that emotionally eat and that might genuinely struggle with binge eating? Mm-hmm. Do you see much of that?
I do. And I think partly it's because I struggled with that myself. And so I do find that many of especially like later teens and 20 something, and then I have worked with some, retired professional dancers as well who are still going through it. Yeah. I think sometimes they reach out to me because they have read or heard something in my story and they know that I've been through it, and therefore they don't worry that I'm going to judge them the way someone who maybe hasn't experienced that would.
Yeah.
And the solution, which I know is so hard to grasp, is first to work through what is the mental component that's led you to this point. But a lot of times it's the consistency piece with food, right? Yeah. Why did I binge? When I think about my dance journey and when my binging was at its worst, well, the mental aspect was that I was living alone my first year in a professional company. And every day I felt like I was not good enough and not meeting expectations and was not talking to anyone about that. And every day I would eat breakfast, but it wasn't enough food. And then I would pack very little food for the day of rehearsals. And then I would be so hungry and I would often not have much food in my apartment. And then I would go to a store and buy something and then eat all of it. The mental piece that I was struggling with being alone and not talking to anyone and getting support for the stress that I was feeling around this first professional job was a component because that was feeding the emotion. And then my actual food approach was very naturally leading to binge eating, which I see a lot of dancers tell me I overeat or I binge eat at night. And it's,
Yeah.
well, yes, because you've eaten almost nothing in the first half of the day and your body is like screaming at you.
Yeah.
And maybe you were stressed out, because a lot of dancers feel really stressed out in dance jobs. And that's another thing that's not talked about a lot, that it can feel really stressful to go into a studio, be working with some guest choreographer who wants things out of you that you're not used to doing. And it's a lot of information to retain, and your peers are getting it. And you're like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I think that all of that feeds into
Food
it.
can be so comforting. I've totally
Yes.
done binge eating. I realize if I'm feeling lonely or isolated, I'll overeat. And then if I'm feeling anxious, I can't eat. It's like this, my body
Right.
can't stomach food. So I've had the both swings. And it's always
Yes.
usually been when there's been a life change or something big's gone on. And that
Right.
late teens to early 20s. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I have a course actually. One of my 2 courses is called Find Food Harmony,
Oh,
and
nice.
it is about the emotional side of food. And one of my favorite things that I share in that course, and I'll share with you guys here because that's good to know. This is that emotional eating doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's only a problem if it's your primary or your only coping mechanism. And
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
that happens, you
Yeah.
know? And I do think there was a time in my life where it was my primary coping mechanism. It was the thing that simultaneously gave me comfort and made me hate myself, right? But it was
Yeah.
yeah, in the moment it was comforting
Yeah.
because I was kind of like pushing things down.
Yeah.
But like it can be a thing. And now I say to my clients, how do you use that constructively? It's like, well, sometimes, yeah, sometimes I'm feeling sad and I'm like, you know what? Some ice cream would be nice right now. And I know what I'm doing. Like I'm
Yeah.
making a choice to
Yeah.
eat something, not because it's like, oh, I'm hungry or in need of calories. It's like, no, I'm going to eat this ice cream right now because it's going to feel good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm thinking about my younger self and even seeing my
Yeah.
daughter who moved away from home and struggled with this a little bit and just going, I just want to give you a hug. Like sometimes
Yes.
it can be hard, those changes and transitions in
Totally.
life. And the ice cream just tastes so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tastes sweet.
I did have a friend who, when I went through that a little bit, she was really sweet, and it was one of the most beautiful things she said. She's like, she just said, you've just moved away from home and done this really massive thing, like at 19, and maybe it's just comfort, and maybe can you give yourself a little bit of comfort and leeway and love? And I was like, yeah. It was just like, instead of the judgment, she was just really
Yes.
nurturing, and it was so helpful and so lovely. So I can imagine if you've been through it, what a beautiful them you are for your clients, to actually something that you've got the actual education in, but also the lived experience. How lucky are they to have you?
Yeah. Yeah. It is work that I feel so honored to do. And I do think about my younger self when I am doing this work a lot. And in so many of my clients, things they'll say, I'm like, yes, I have been exactly there. One of my clients
Yeah.
said she was listening to my podcast the other day and she's like, and you shared this story about like what you would do in first grade. And she's like, and I did that too. And I was like, yeah, I get it. And like we have these common experiences, and dancers, I think, have a lot of common experiences. And it helps so much when you can connect with someone who understands that world.
Oh, that's beautiful. And going back to my dance parents and teachers that are listening, what are some of the early signs that a dancer's relationship with their food or body might be becoming unhealthy? So looking from the outside, but then also if you can answer it for the dancer that might be experiencing it themselves.
Yeah. For parents and teachers, part of what's very hard is a first step into disordered territory can actually be a focus or fixation on healthy eating. And I mean, look, my kid is I can call her a picky eater too. And so like I think sometimes parents, and I could imagine myself having the same kind of thought, but like, seeing your kid, oh, like eat more vegetables and prioritize these nutrient dense foods. We're like, oh my God, that's amazing. But we have to be really aware of when it can become restrictive or, like I said, it's now recognized eating disorder, orthorexia, where you are focused or obsessed with only eating what you view to be as healthy or clean foods. Because that too just becomes its own obsession.
Yeah.
You know, if you notice, oh, like they're eating healthier, and then we go out to a restaurant and there's nothing that they'll eat, or, you know, they order the plain chicken and steamed vegetables. That's not great. And I think that we need to make sure that we notice that they're eating enough. And if they're suddenly saying no to every cookie and previously they like loved cookies, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
And so I think you want to make sure that your kid maintains a balance. And if they're eating more vegetables, cool, but you don't want to see them start eliminating things that they previously loved to eat, even if they were less nutrient rich. And that's a big thing. And I think too, like sometimes dance teachers will notice body changes or see body changes before parents will. You know, like these days, right? Kids wear baggy sweatpants and sweatshirts as their warm-up clothes or their cover-ups before dance. And so parents might not see any body change or really notice that because they're not seeing them in a leotard and tights. And so if a teacher sees a change that's like, they look like they're getting smaller, and you know, in your teenage years, that's pretty concerning. You shouldn't be dieting. You shouldn't be losing weight. Like, yes, maybe someone is going through puberty and they gained weight and now they're getting taller and so they're looking different. But if it looks like weight loss and you see that as a teacher, I would reach out to the parent and say, hey, not in a judgment thing and not jumping to conclusions, but just say, hey, we've noticed some changes in so-and-so's body, and we are a little concerned. We just wanted to check in and make sure everything is okay. Because at one of the schools where I work, we've had concerns, and it's turned out, oh, they're going through this digestive thing. We're working with a dietitian. We're working with the doctors. But yes, like they've lost a bunch of weight because we're trying to figure out this issue that they're dealing with. So you don't jump to conclusions, because there sometimes are explanations for what has happened, and or health challenges or struggles or stress or whatever, you know. But as a teacher, I do think it's a responsibility to keep that communication open and to alert parents if you notice something that they may not see.
That's really great advice. Is there anything as well, while we're on the subject, that teachers might want to tweak in their language or can be more aware of that might impact expectations around body image?
You can talk about engaging core muscles without saying suck your stomach in.
Yeah, right.
And lengthening your spine and feel your tailbone go down to the ground instead of like, don't let your butt stick out.
Yeah.
The butt was one of the things for me. Like I always had a butt. And so my butt was always going to stick out. So like that correction, I would like really try to like tuck it under, but it's not going anywhere. And so dancers then look at their bodies in the mirror and they're like, I can never do this. So something is wrong with my body. You know, I can't achieve this, what they're asking for. So teachers have to think, and also like, know, like in front of them, this is a body shape, you know, like if I try to tell her to tuck her tailbone under, she's going to hurt her hips, right? Because that's not her anatomy. It's not going to work for her. Teachers need to be able to acknowledge that too and know, I can't keep saying this same correction to this same person if this is the shape of her body. It's not going to change. And I don't want to say something so much that she goes home and she's like, well, the only way to make, and this was right, my brain, the only way to make my butt and legs go away and be thin enough is to stop eating or to eat little enough that they get smaller, then maybe it won't be such an issue. We have to think about the way we give corrections and the way that you communicate corrections so that people don't look in the mirror and think, oh, this is just something wrong with my body.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
looking towards the future, what do you feel makes a more stable and sustainable relationship with the body? Like, what does that look like for a dancer who is still training at a high level?
The biggest thing for dancers is connection to themselves and appreciation for what their bodies are doing for them. Non-dancers can walk around and be grateful that their legs work and they're walking around and they're breathing and maybe they're working out and they feel strong or whatever. But like dancers are doing superhuman things and crazy, extraordinary things. And you literally couldn't do any of it without this body of yours. And to find gratitude for what it does for you and to try to connect with what you love about what you're doing so that it's not only about how what you're doing looks all the time is really important. And I think that to remember that your body is also your home. It's not just this thing that does the dancing for you. This is where you live and where you will be for the rest of your life. And so to take care of it is not only going to help you dance better and feel better as a dancer, but it's going to help you just enjoy your life and feel better in life.
Oh, thank you, Jess. What a beautiful way to finish our conversation today. And for anyone listening, how can they find you?
So I'm pretty consistent across the board. It's at The Whole Dancer on Instagram. TheWholeDancer.com is my website.
Yeah.
If you wanted to shoot me an email, my email is jess@thewholedancer.com.
Yeah, and your programs sound amazing. So thank you for sharing some of them earlier.
Thank you so much, Kate. This was great.